I truly believe that none of us have enough lifetimes to learn everything that we need to know. So therefore, it's that humility to say, well, who's got the right skills? Who's got the right insights? Yeah, great question. So the inspiration for me for writing this comes from several angles. The first thing is just looking at what's going on in the world right now, and the McKinsey quote that the pace of change will never be this slow again. There's so much stuff that's happening, and it occurred to me there is a gap between where we are in terms of how we lead, in terms of how we manage, and where the world is right now. And a story that I often share to illustrate this is actually it was the second time I was sailing around the world, and we went around this group of islands called the San Blas Islands, just outside Panama. And as we were sailing around there, what I noticed was that a lot of ships had run aground, and I was looking at that and saying, well, why is that the case? And I started investigating. And what I found out was they were all using a set of charts that were last created by Captain Cook several hundred years ago. And of course, they're trying to navigate a new world using an old set of charts. And my contention is that so many leaders in business are using ideas, methodologies that they got 10, 20, 30, 40, maybe even 50 years ago. And they're trying to manage this incredibly fast moving world using a set of ideas from where things were before. And so for me, the inspiration to write this book was, well, what's that rethink to be able to lead in today's exponential age where things are moving so quickly? It's not enough just to say, well, let's grow by 10% or 20% based on what we did last year. We need to be thinking 5x, 10x, 100x, 200x. And therefore, what does that mean? And for me, that requires a completely different shift in the way that we think. So basically, it was just looking at that workplace, and of course, sort of speaking to lots of different audiences, seeing how many of these, let's say, older mindsets are still in place. So for me, it was bringing together a lot of different ideas to say, okay, what is that leadership? What's that thinking we need to be able to deal with today's challenges rather than yesterday's challenges? Yeah, that's a great question. So look, what is the big bold mindset? So for me, there's a number of different characteristics which really embody that mindset. And I think the first and the obvious one is people who think very expansively and think out there and sort of just look out into the future and say 5 years from now, 10 years from now, what does the world look like? How do we imagine that? And that's perhaps what one might expect when one thinks of that notion of big bold mindset. But there's a lot more to it than that as well. It's having a huge amount of humility. I truly believe that none of us have enough lifetimes to learn everything that we need to know. So therefore, it's that humility to say, well, who's got the right skills? Who's got the right insights? One of the people I spend a lot of time studying is Ray Dalio, who built the world's largest hedge fund, Bridgewater Associates. And he has a lovely saying. He says, everything changed in his world when he went from saying, I'm right, to how do I know I'm right? And I think that's something that people with a big, bold mindset innately say. It's like, well, how do I know I'm right? How do I challenge my thinking? And it's that curiosity, it's that sense of experimentation. What experiments can I run? And then what reflections can I have on them to say, okay, well, where does this take me now? Where does this next set of experiments lead me? So I think it's that. And I think also it's an ability to be able to shuttle between that big picture and what that looks like out in the future. And then coming back to today and saying, okay, what are the things that I need to do to be able to move that forward today? Because if you just spend all your time in the future dreaming, nothing's ever going to happen, right? You have to then sort of create that shift. Mark Randolph, who was one of the founders of Netflix, he likens it to basically cycling down a very steep mountain on a mountain bike. And you've got to keep flicking your eyes up to look where you're going, and then suddenly look back down to right here in the moment, because if you don't, you're going to come off your bike. And it's that ability to shuttle between looking forwards right here in the moment, and also reflecting on what's gone before and sort of saying, okay, what have those experiments taught me? So I'd say that those are some of the most powerful characteristics that I see around the big bold mindset. Yeah, that's a great question. Like, I think there's two ways to think about this. Let's call them push and pull. And like the push way is that if you, so one of my mentors used to say to me, if you plan on being in the business that you're in today, in 5 years' time, you won't be in business. So the push basically is like, you can't just say, well, let's grow by 10%, let's grow by 20%. We have no choice to think big and bold, because otherwise somebody else will come in and disrupt your marketplace and find a different way to go and do it. And like literally every sector that I look at, it's being disrupted. And so therefore the push factor is you can't stand still, because otherwise the world will be taken away from you. The pull factor, as to why should you go towards this? For me, that's all about engaging with your team and sort of saying, you know, what are the things that would make you proud if we can go and achieve it? What would be an exciting thing we could go out there and go and do? And of course, that for me is the single best way to engage your team, to co-create that story together, to get excited together about doing something that really makes a difference. I think, you know, one of the things that I also see woven into the big bold mindset is that sense of purpose, doing things that matter rather than just doing things for the money, actually just doing, building businesses which really have impact. Essentially, one of the reflections I have is that, you know, I do a lot of work, well, in many sectors, but a lot of stuff recently in the pharmaceutical sector. And so often we'll spend time talking with the teams and just say, well, why are you here? Why do you care about the mission this organization is on? And so often, particularly in the pharmaceutical sector, it comes up, well, actually, we went into this to save lives, to make a difference to humanity, to people. And once you start going back to that core thing, oh, that's right, that's why we're here. And in our fast-paced world, it's so easy to forget about those really powerful driving forces. And when we bring it back to that core purpose, when we remind ourselves that's the reason that we're doing it, that what I noticed, that unleashes a lot of energy, a lot of momentum. So for me, it's finding that purpose, finding that excitement together as a team. So those are the two sides for me, the push side and then the pull side. What's that thing we're going to go and create that's really exciting together? Yeah, thank you for the question, Megan. So look, what's interesting actually is a lot of the ideas in the book, I have been talking to audiences as I've been developing the research and the ideas. I've been sharing these ideas both in the talks that I do in the half-day, the leadership experience programs that I and my team run. So what's really interesting is that I've had real-time feedback on how some of these ideas are actually landing. So actually, the talks have actually shaped the book. But what I'm seeing more now with the book as it's come out is that I'm seeing a good amount of interest in people sort of saying here, what is the mindset that our leaders need to be able to tackle these challenges? And there's a set of 21 principles in the book. And for any of the talks that I do, I sit down with the leadership team and say, okay, well, what are the key things that you need to be able to focus on with your team? And then in a sort of, I don't know, 45 minutes, hour-long talk, we'd say, okay, what are the 3 principles we want to focus on most out of those 21 principles? So basically, it's using it as a toolkit to say, okay, let's focus on this area because these are the challenges that your audience are facing. And of course, every audience is facing a different set of challenges. There'll be some commonalities, but it's using it as a tool to say, okay, let's get into some of those details. And how do we deal with that? And then of course, you know, lots of audiences, they also buy the book as well, so that the teams can go away afterwards and not just hear the talk, but then reflect on it, do some of the exercises, the activities. So it's very much it's like a handbook, if you like, to go with the talks, so that people can dive further as well. So I hope that, you know, it becomes a centerpiece of lots of talks in the future as well. So.